All video games use information to change how the player interacts with them. This includes mechanics like the HUD, maps, or even movement to tell the player what the game wants you to do. These features are so fundamental, they are standard across all games in some fashion. But what happens if you remove them? Are these games still fun? Do they have direction through story, dialogue, or world design? Are they even playable? This is what I'll be covering for the game Dragon Age Inquisition. With other titles I've played in the past in this manner, these points inevitably come up on the walks between objectives, locations, or people of interest. Those other titles being Skyrim, Cresol Theater of Idols, Bioshock 2, and Dark Souls 2. All of which were actually very enjoyable experiences apart from small issues here and there. I will also mention now that this won't be a video about the narrative, themes, or even the main storyline of these games. It may come up situationally as to explain how it adds to the overall experience, though it won't be a main focus. This being said, let's dive in. Upon starting the game, my first step was to see how different the timing is from walking and running. The walking clip is a little more than a minute long, while the running clip is roughly 3 times faster at 20 seconds. This is a useful metric to gauge how much extra time I will be spending in the game, especially when you consider that the main storyline playthrough of this game reportedly takes about 30 to 40 hours. This means that, conservatively speaking, I'll be spending a lot of time with this game. The first map, the Hinterlands, embodies this facet of the game. It is large and it's beautiful. Lush green forests with mountains sprinkled with ancient ruins, though not all is well here. When you first enter this area, it is war-torn and rather chaotic. Anywhere not in the main town is held by one of 2 enemy factions, these being the Mages and Templars. There are even zones where these 2 will duke it out amongst themselves, which really adds to the overall immersion of this area. And yet, despite how big the map is, none of the walks between the locations ever felt too far. Or at least, if it was a 15-minute walk, there was plenty to do and see on the way. There are always landmarks, points of interest, and just pretty backdrops to immerse yourself in. It also helps that most of these things are along a main road. You won't be trudging through wilderness often to find them. While walking along the dirt roads, you get a good chance to take in the atmosphere this game presents. It gives you time to think about the narrative, faction motivations, and the overall state of affairs you're actively partaking in. And even during moments where you're just going to the next objective, the downtime between combat feels good. It makes it less like you're running to the next encounter and more like you're actively on a journey in this world. It also helps that many places in this game are dripping with atmosphere and detail. The leaves of the trees themselves have far more detail than one might expect alone, as shown here. The local flora can sometimes tell a story in of itself. There was a moment in the Storm Coast that I found trees that looked awfully like river birches. The places of these trees felt odd as there was no river to be seen, as well as the proximity to the ocean. Though as I explored further, there was an area called the Long River right by it. While a small discovery, and one that most people probably never cared to look at, it instantly added a depth to this game that is rare in others. It makes sense that a place called the Storm Coast would often change geographically with the amount of erosion from said storms. This conclusion isn't limited to a walking-only playthrough, though the extra time in this area certainly helped spark the thought. The Storm Coast was also a particularly good area to see the different animations for walking up and down an incline, as shown here. Speaking of the wilderness, it would seem that this world has a real bear problem. The times you explore the wild, it shifts from a calm, tranquil walk to back-to-back bear encounters. There was a time where I was attacked by 3 bears and a pack of wolves at the same time. Unfortunately, I wasn't recording. But this abundance of predators is likely due to the game's crafting system. The developers probably didn't want the materials harvested from animals to feel rare, which is understandable. My only complaint with this is that these bears are also absolute tanks. In the Hinterlands, where your max level range is from 4 to 12, having bears with nearly 4,000 health while you deal 50 damage a hit is a bit much. This becomes worse later in the game when a pack of hyenas with 7,000 health can find you, and you're dealing comparable damage to before. And this applies to all hyenas in that level, not just a particular pack. This also feels like a good time to mention that despite walking this entire playthrough, the combat was the most sluggish aspect of this game. I will admit now that I had to switch the difficulty to easy mode, which may have aided this conclusion, but I changed it largely due to when you don't have a HUD, it's very difficult to tell how much health you have. This game doesn't offer consistent cues to the player for when you're low health. You will sometimes hear callouts from your party members that someone needs help, though this doesn't necessarily mean that they're low on hit points. This is the last I'll mention of the combat, but the focus system in the game is completely HUD-based. Focus works as a sort of ultimate ability, but there's no sound cue, no visual, and your character doesn't say anything to hint that your ability is charged. But combat critiques aside, the overall combat to exploration split while walking feels decent. There are times where the encounters number too many, though this is somewhat remedied as the more you conquer in your treks, the safer the roads become. This does not apply to bears. It's also a good thing that the roads become safer as you play, as if you want to complete everything, there is a lot of backtracking. As per my immersion rules, I don't use fast travel in these games. And I will say in this regard, Dragon Age Inquisition really tested my patience. I'd already been to a good many areas, only to have to return once I met a certain NPC or used a structure. The bone shards are the worst offender of this, only being able to be revealed through specific scopes in the world. These bone shards also feel rather random in their placement. Sometimes they're located in a really pretty scene, other times they're wedged between two rocks with nothing else of interest in the area. I see this as a wasted opportunity for genuine exploration and usage of other game mechanics. With this style of play, it would have been better if when you were near one, you could use the game's rather underused compass hot or cold system, in which when you search, it points in the direction of a thing of interest rather than highlighting it directly. This system is somewhat unique in the game as it uses a combination of sound cues, volume, and your own perception of the world for how quickly you find it. If this mechanic worked on undiscovered bone shards, it would allow the player to explore them organically, and if they get stuck, they can use the proper method to seek them out. As it stands, it added a lot of wasted time on this playthrough. Dragon Age Inquisition does a very good job of making the world feel alive. From the get-go, the world feels as if it's in motion, and your actions directly affect it. There's also much history to be found in the form of monuments, landmarks, ruins, books, and songs that you can find and read. Cities and towns are bustling with activity, and here you can talk to citizens and sometimes recruit them to your cause. Doing so actually has a tangible impact too, reducing the resources needed for certain operations. While the world building was done wonderfully, much of the time starting the expeditions felt very underwhelming. I never felt the need to prepare a specific potion, armor, or ability set between the camps where you can rest. This could be because I was on easy mode, though I will note due to the lack of information during combat, I still managed to die, so difficulty in this regard is a bit relative. I suppose it didn't help that the game doesn't give you much to prepare in the first place. This game isn't like Skyrim, where you can brew a menagerie of potions, plan your route, or make and improve armor as readily. I must admit, however, this game more than makes up for this in other areas. I can't be too upset about this, especially because having this as a real mechanic players need to think about takes a monumental amount of effort to properly develop. So, does this game feel like it was made with walking in mind? I would say no. As mentioned, this game's distance between places isn't awful to walk. The scenery also benefits from a closer viewing, being not only beautiful but immersive. Though the game as a whole isn't designed for this. The total amount of time I spent walking in the Hinterlands alone amasses to around 40 hours of gameplay, and although I enjoyed the time doing it, it's clear that even for me, who enjoys long playthroughs of games, this is simply too long for one area alone. Does this game feel like it was made with playing without a HUD in mind? Also no. This game doesn't even let you disable all aspects of the HUD. You will still see prompts and highlighted objects even after turning everything off. It also has the downside of making combat horrid. The game most certainly wasn't made with this in mind. But should you play this game without a HUD and walking? I would say, if anything, walking while you're exploring areas for the first time is truly magical. The sense of wonder and awe at the scenery and the feeling of traveling as a party through a world is really quite strong. Maybe when you have to backtrack, however, is when you should run. You've seen the sights, time to get it done. Just like this video, I hope you enjoyed.